Because of gamers, I guess, St. Lotus?
Welcome to Leaping Larry's Revolutionary Reading Theatre.
Okay, it's time for us to do our reading today. Today we're continuing on our read of On the Juche Philosophy, Chapter 3. Talking about another principle of the historical analysis of Juche. Which, like I was talking about, is a new analysis of social history in much the same way that historical materialism was an analysis of social history. Here we go. Principle 3. The socio-historical movement is a creative movement of the masses. Socio-historical movement is a creative movement of the masses to transform and change nature and society. The masses' activity for an independent life is characterized by creativity. Humanity realizes their desire in life through their creative activity. The objects of humanity's creative activity are nature and society. By means of their activity to transform nature, which surrounds them, and to reform the society in which they live, humanity creates new material and cultural wealth and builds a new system and a new life. The masses of the people are creators who remake and change nature and society. They are desirous of abolishing the old and creating the new, and have creative ability to transform nature and society. Human history is the history of the masses' creation. Since the beginning of human history, the masses of the people have been conquering nature and making what is necessary for their existence and development by their creative labor, and effecting social progress by their creative activity to change the old. Their continuous creative activity has advanced society. Their creative activity to conquer nature and bring about social progress accompanies struggle. The process of creation is precisely the process of struggle. Without struggle, the creation of new things would be inconceivable. The process of replacement of an old social system with a new one, and the social emancipation of the masses in particular, is a process of fierce class struggle. A revolution begins with struggle and ends with struggle. The forces which go in for the preservation of an old system and life never give up their place of their own accord. A new system and life can be created only through the struggle to wipe out the old forces. All progress and changes made by humanity throughout history, after all, are the fruit of the masses' creative struggle. The process of their creative struggle is the process of developing themselves to be more powerful beings. The masses of the people have increased their creative ability, while at the same time transforming nature and developing society. The history of social productive forces is the history of the growth of humanity's creative capability to conquer nature. The history of social revolutions is the history of the process to strengthen the revolutionary power of the masses to reshape society. With a growth in the creative ability of the masses, the socio-historical movement advances further. The communist movement, organized and developed by the working class, is the highest form of creative movement in human history. This is a movement to build a society where the independence and creativity of the masses, of the people, are fully realized. The highest ideal of humankind, which is fundamentally different from all class societies that have existed in history. The creative power of the masses, too, is exploited fully in the revolutionary movement of the working class. It is not until their involvement in the revolutionary movement of the working class, the communist movement, that the working masses, whose creative activity has been restrained by the ruling classes during the whole period of antagonistic class societies, become genuine creators of history, who transform the world to meet their own will and desire and reshape their destiny in an independent manner. And this, by the way, explains perfectly why, in the case of every revolution we have seen, you had a progress of like what took capitalist society hundreds of years to accomplish in mere decades. Because that creative power of the masses is fully unleashed. The USSR was the first to prove it, right? And this is why the reactionaries feel the need to stifle its development as much as possible, to keep that bad example from being realized, essentially. The revolutionary movement, the creative activity of the masses, requires that the creative stand be always maintained firmly in the struggle to reshape nature and society. Adhering to the creative stand is indispensable to leading the revolutionary movement to victory. Only when they adhere to the creative stand can the masses keep properly their position as masters of the revolution and construction, fulfill their role as such. The creative stand is one that the masses of the people ought to maintain as transformers of nature and society, as shapers of their own destiny. Without maintaining this stand, it would be impossible for them to reshape nature and society to meet their will and desire, or hold their own destiny in their hands and shape it for themselves. Adherence to the creative stand is a sure guarantee for solving all the problems by the efforts of the masses themselves, to meet the requirements of the revolution and in accordance with their interests. As the leader instructed, the creative stand constitutes the fundamental method that must be relied on in the revolution and construction. The revolutionary movement requires that one should depend firmly on the creative wisdom and strength of the masses, and utilize them to the full. Masses are the masters and the motive force of the revolution, and possessors of inexhaustible creative talents and strength. Only when one depends on their creative talents and strength will one be able to understand the objective world correctly, solve all problems to suit the reality, and transform nature and society successfully. The creative stand provides the method by which to give an active stimulus to the creative power of the masses, push forward the revolution and construction on one's own initiative, overcome the difficulties in the path of progress by the struggle of the masses, and ensure continued innovations and ceaseless advance. The revolutionary movement takes place in a specific reality, which is always diverse and undergoes ceaseless changes. It rejects all sorts of schemata and dogmas, and opposes the outdated attitude of imitating others mechanically. A schematic viewpoint and dogmatic way of thinking restrain creativity and prevent correct understanding of the ever-changing diverse realities, and block the possibility of working out a scientific method of revolution and construction. Fuck the schemata. Only when one bases oneself firmly in the specific reality and maintains a creative attitude towards everything, will one be able to identify the correct method of transforming nature and society and apply it skillfully. The creative stand represents the method whereby one rejects the dogmatic attitude and grasps the reality in its true perspective, and concretely by one's own thinking, and solves all questions accordingly. Reject dogmatism, comrades. Reject dogmatism. The creative stand constitutes the revolutionary method, which enables one to meet most effectively the requirements of our time when the masses of the people have emerged as masters of history, and when the revolutionary movement is highly developed. Our time requires that the role of the masses in the revolution and construction be enhanced to the highest degree, and that all questions be solved creatively. The creative stand offers a sure guarantee for the victory of the revolution by enabling one to formulate a scientific revolutionary strategy and struggle policies in keeping with the development of our time and the new requirements of the revolution, and ceaselessly increase the creative power of the masses. So that's the third principle, the creative movement. Let's do the next one as well, before we listen to the Malma talk. So the fourth principle of the Juche socio-historical analysis is right here, number 4. The people's consciousness of independence plays the decisive role in revolutionary struggle. Oh shit! You know what's really great about this principle is it is actually an answer to the original, the idea or the incorrect analysis that basically Marxism first started with, which was the idea that revolution would break out as the result of capitalism being highly developed and its contradictions being so high. This explains why that didn't happen, and why revolution broke out in places where capitalism wasn't so developed. In places where people were suffering under colonialism and national oppression. And of course, the reason is because the people's consciousness of independence is the thing that plays the decisive role. Right? Which also explains why revolution didn't find, because people's revolutionary consciousness in the highly developed capitalist societies are suppressed by capitalist corporate media. It's what helps and the main factor that prevents revolutionary struggle from breaking out here. I mean, and we all know this very well, right? Instead of people being revolutionary conscious, they see a party that calls itself labor and wants to pass a few measures without actual fundamental change, and thinks, oh, well, I'll vote for the NDP, or I'll vote for the Democrats or something, and think they're doing a harm reduction. You know? Or even worse, think they're doing a revolutionary act. So, the people's consciousness of independence plays the decisive role in revolutionary struggle. And this is a fundamental break. Or not even a break, but this is a fundamental difference in what Marxism determines to be the decisive role in revolutionary struggle. And Marxism recognizes the role of human consciousness and stuff, but simply because it is focused on overcoming idealism, it's sort of limited in not really explaining this fully, and ends up explaining humanity as being a totality of social relations. Well, what we have learned through this read of the Juche philosophy and through all of the philosophical principles is we have learned what makes humanity more specifically. Those 3 traits: independence, which is the desire to live independently from fetters that restrict or oppress or exploit us; creativity, which is that ability to transform nature in a way that other not only transform nature, but increase our ability to transform nature in a way that other entities and beings are not able to. And thirdly, consciousness, which is our ability to understand the world and realize its laws so that we may conduct creative activities in accordance with the material laws, right? Those are the three aspects that makes humanity unique. And those three things, as I always mentioned, those are the three Juche philosophical definitions, not the definitions in general. Up Forte, welcome in. So we'll wait for the ads. We're going to wait for the ads to end here while I sip on my root beer. And I say, thanks all you subscribers for keeping the stream going. It means an absolute ton to me. When I get back from the commercial break, I'm gonna shill. When I get back for the commercial break, I'm gonna shill and beg people for gifts and subs and stuff again.
Let's go, smokes.
So be ready with that PayPal command, Sam. I'm trying to make an effort to more do that, to make sure I mention it more. Thank you, BB, for that redemption, by the way. Always use some more of that. Gotta break up some more green. Oh no, wait, I already filled it. I just have to light it. Hey, thanks, BB. So the ads end in 1 minute, and then we'll shill for ourselves, and then I'll continue reading. I don't recommend reading The Intercept, but really don't recommend reading The Intercept. That's my general rule of thumb right there. All right, I'm really excited to do this one, and then we will go on to the candy and stuff like that. Actually, before the candy, we have Julius Malma giving a speech, and I have Foreign Man in a Foreign Land, Tourism is the New Slavery. I wanted to share and say, going any place, like, tourism is the new slavery. Okay, that should be the end of the ad, so we're going to read this part here. People's consciousness of independence plays a decisive role in revolutionary struggle. But before I do, I just want to say that if you want to avoid the ad breaks in the future, feel free to hit that subscribe button if you are finding anything that I talk about on here educational, informational, or entertainable. If you find it to be any one of those things, please consider dropping a sub, gift sub, biddies, or a direct donation is, of course, greatly appreciated. However you choose to support the channel means an absolute ton, and for your generous contributions, you get the best little pictures on all of Twitch. Let's see some of those little pictures. And by the way, it's my birthday in 3 days, so it could be something like a birthday present as well, huh? Don't you want to make Larry happy with some birthday gifts? I feel like you do. Larry's only going to turn 38 once after all. No? All right, let's look at principle number 4. The people's consciousness of independence plays the decisive role in revolutionary struggle. The revolution is propelled forward to victory by the conscious struggle of the masses of people. The leader put a new light on the principle that the masses' consciousness of independence plays the decisive role in the revolutionary struggle. Ideological consciousness determines and regulates all actions of humanity. Consciousness, essentially, is the highest quality that makes humanity superior to all beings, that is, superior in their ability to transform the world and reshape it, as well as their own destiny, and the most powerful in the world. It is the sophisticated function of humanity's brain, the most developed of their physical organ. The brain plays the central role in the activity of human life, and consciousness, which is the function of the brain, commands all actions of humanity. Ideological consciousness reflects humanity's desire and interests, and for this reason it has the most active effect on their conduct. Without the determination and regulation of ideological consciousness, humanity's independent and creative activities would be inconceivable. If a person is to be an independent creative being, they must have the consciousness of independence. This consciousness means being aware of one's being the master of one's own destiny and signifies the will to shape one's destiny by one's own initiative. Only when a person has the consciousness of independence can they conduct conscious activity to conquer nature and actively struggle against the oppressors who encroach and trample upon their independence. Humanity's endeavor to acquire a scientific understanding of the world and transform it actively is none other than a manifestation of their consciousness. Humanity's role in transforming nature and society, after all, is the role of their ideological consciousness. The consciousness of independence plays a decisive role in the masses' revolutionary movement for independence. All revolutionary movements are conscious movements. A revolutionary movement begins with awakening people to an advanced idea and emerges victorious on the strength of the masses of the people who are armed with the advanced idea. Ideological consciousness is the decisive factor that determines humanity's role in the revolution and construction. Ideological consciousness determines the class character of the actions of people who participate in revolutionary movement. There can be no superclass ideology in a class society. And what is basic to humanity's ideological consciousness is their class awareness. People's attitude towards the class struggle is determined by their class consciousness. And of course, people's activities are based on their class and social position and limited by them. But their social and class positions have effect on their actions always through their ideological consciousness. So in other words, it's not their class and social position itself which gives them reactionary ideas or reactionary consciousness, etc., but rather it is their ideology. Now, being in this certain social or class position limits and influences this because, of course, of the social pressure that surrounds them, right? Which class interests people struggle for in class society depends on which class ideology they have. Only when they have the ideology of an advanced class the consciousness of independence? Can they have a correct class standpoint and struggle for the victory of the revolution? The will and fighting power of people demonstrated in the revolutionary movement are also determined by their ideological consciousness. The level of the willpower and strength demonstrated by the people is determined by their ideology. Only those who have a firm consciousness of independence will be able to take an indomitable attitude towards the revolution, actively participate in it with a strong will, and struggle to the end, overcoming all difficulties and trials. Yep, exactly, Frank. It's as simple as that. And still people will argue against this, though. Like communists who try and treat Marxism-Leninism as a identity rather than an ideology, I think is a good way to put that. Marxists who take that position, they constantly make this mistake, and what they try and do is try and shore up and make their analysis of social history more mechanical in reaction to this. You could call it that. Yep, they certainly are, in many senses. The economic situation is the basis, but the various elements of the superstructure, political forms of the class struggle, and its results, to wit, constitutions established by the victorious class after its successful battle, the reflexes of all these actual struggles in the brains of the participants, political, juristic, philosophical theories, religious views, and further development into systems, also exercise their influence upon the course of historical struggles, and in many cases, preponderate in determining their form. Yep. Yep. Exactly. Which is what I try to say. The masses' revolutionary ability is unfathomable, but it cannot find full expression if they are not ideologically awakened. Ideologically unawakened masses are unable to rise in the revolutionary struggle in spite of exploitation and oppression imposed upon them. Nor can they successfully transform nature and society to meet their needs. Only those masses who are conscious of their class interests can demonstrate their revolutionary force to the full and guarantee victory in the revolution. The role of ideological consciousness steadily increases with the development of the revolutionary movement. Yeah, I mean, the whole reason why there is such a thing as defectors from DPRK BOP is because of what happens if they end up in the South. It's just a scare word, right? It's just because in the South, if you're found to be somebody who used to live in the North, you'll have you will be put in the Freedom Factory. and you won't be allowed to have a passport, etc. Because you are a defector now by law. By nature, there's a new movie on Netflix. Oh dear, what is it? By nature, the communist movement, the highest stage of the revolutionary movement. Just got an connects with a woman who lost her will to live, learning together that love can triumph over great adversity. Oh my god. Sounds like a piece of trash. Who makes that movie? CIA? By nature, the communist movement, the highest stage of the revolutionary movement, requires a high degree of consciousness from people. The socialist and communist societies are built by the purposeful and conscious efforts of the masses. The role of ideological consciousness is incomparably enhanced when building socialism and communism after the seizure of power, and the establishment of the socialist system by the working class. Capitalism depends on the discipline of hunger and the rod, but socialism and communism rely on the high level of people's consciousness. True, control is necessary in the socialist society, which is transitional. Hear that, anarchists? Sorry, anarchists, but control is necessary in the socialist society because, in fact, it is transitional. Like, you see there's this difference right here between trying to explain, like, anarchism, right? And think about the way that developed and how this is literally telling you, it spells it out right here. True, control is necessary in the socialist society, which is transitional. But the more the remnants of old society are eliminated, as progress is made in building socialism and communism, the greater becomes the significance of people's consciousness. Socialism and communism provide all conditions for increasing the role of people's consciousness, ideological consciousness, to the full. In the socialist society, the advanced ideology of the working class prevails all over the community. Capitalism subordinates even man's thinking and action to money considerations. But socialism and communism make the masses of the people true masters of society, and therefore give full play to the revolutionary enthusiasm and creative zeal of the masses. The tremendous role of ideological consciousness in the revolutionary struggle for socialism and communism is also connected with the characteristics of the revolutionary thought of the working class. The role of ideological consciousness in social progress depends on its class character and content. The reactionary ideology of the exploiting class hampers social progress, whereas the advanced ideology of the progressive class gives impetus to the development of society. The revolutionary ideology of the working class, the most independent class, has an incomparably greater revolutionary influence than any other advanced ideas in history. The revolutionary thought of the working class mirrors the laws of social development and the aspirations of the masses in a scientific manner, so that it becomes a great material force in social progress. It is a weapon with which to understand and change the reality and create the future. Unlike the reactionary thinking of the exploiting class, which hinders the forward movement of history and advocates the old moribund system, the revolutionary thought of the working class performs the mission to push forward and lead historical progress. The revolutionary movement is a conscious movement, and for this reason, one must always hold fast to people's thinking as the main thing in the revolutionary struggle and construction work. Doing this is an important principle that must be maintained in the revolution and construction. Grasping humanity's thinking is the main thing in the revolution and construction. Means by solving all problems by attaching decisive importance to the ideological factor and enhancing the role of ideological consciousness. Attaching decisive... I know, it's like he's a wokist, Frank. Attaching decisive importance to the ideological factor is a law of revolutionary movement. Material factors, too, play a great part in the revolutionary movement. But the existence of material conditions does not give rise to revolution automatically. How to make use of these material conditions depends on people's conscious activities. Hey, Kirokim, welcome in. Whether these material conditions are prepared quickly or not depend on humanity's activity. The revolution can be pushed forward only by the active struggle of the revolutionaries and the masses. Fundamentally speaking, a revolution does not always break out when all the necessary conditions exist, the West. Nor is it carried out always in favorable circumstances, everywhere revolution has happened. Right? And that's why I say this socio-historical principle is actually so important, because it overcomes the limitations of historical materialism's analysis of history, which unfortunately I don't want to say ends, but runs up into more and more limitations at the moment when socialism is achieved, right? And at the moment of trying to analyze social history prior to antagonistic class-based society. It's the two places where historical materialism really starts to break down, as far as its historical limitations are concerned. And that's not to say, again, that it's wrong. It's simply that you get, like, when you get to socialist society, and then more and more questions that historical materialism itself is not able to answer rises to the surface. And the failure to address those conditions and the failure to answer those questions, and instead get bogged down in existing historical materialism and treating it like Catholicism, treating it like Sunday school dogmatism, is exactly what a major factor, perhaps the most major factor, in leading to the overthrow of USSR. Right up into the point where, like, if people had better ideological training, the masses and the revolutionaries and the workers, and if everybody in USSR had better ideological training that suited their new conditions in socialist society, they would have better understood and recognized counter-revolutionary trends within their party. And rather than opposing their workers' party and opposing the socialist system itself, they would have dispensed with these counter-revolutionary trends and the people who were pushing those trends. So in many sense of the word, that is the major thing that led to the overthrow of USSR. It's the major thing that allowed it to be undermined and eventually overthrown by imperialists. And why they were captured by reactionary ideas. A romanticism of capitalism, if you will. Anyways, hope that makes sense to you all. Waiting with folded arms for all conditions to ripen is tantamount to refusing to make a revolution. Primary importance, therefore, should be given to the ideological factor in the revolutionary struggle and construction work. And, on the basis of strenuous efforts, should be made to create all the necessary conditions. Exactly. So you're saying, if you aren't aware, you will get misled. Russian chauvinism absolutely played a big factor. And I would say that the fact that Russian chauvinism was allowed to continue is exactly part of the failure of ideological training, right? It's a reflection of that failure. But yeah, Russian chauvinism. Not just Russian chauvinism. It's deeper than that, right? It's a white colonial, almost like supremacy view that was somewhat unique to the conditions of Russia, um, as it existed as a czarist imperial country, and that's reflected in Trotskyism and in basically every counter-revolutionary trend that emerged from USSR. But Trotskyism is a great example of it, where, like, I constantly point out, like, Trotsky's viewpoint regarding revolution, the motive forces of the revolution, and his disdain for Stalin pretty much all stemmed from him thinking, I'm a Western Russian. I'm from the western parts of the Russian Empire. Therefore, I'm more civilized and European than these colonized nations like Georgia, right? And that same attitude is exactly the type of attitude that Khrushchev and other people who unfortunately took leadership of the USSR also had. It's why Lenin and Stalin's ideas for the Constitution and guaranteeing the right to succession were never adopted. It's why after the dissolution of the Communist International, there was still this expectation from the Communist Party of Russia that other republics in the USSR would simply follow suit to whatever the Russian Communist Party was putting forward as a policy. I mean, we have to abolish Europe as a concept. I mean, I constantly say, like, actually, Rick and we had a conversation not that long ago talking about decolonization and perhaps the process we could see that taking. And it's why I constantly say, like, I see revolution here and land back here winning first. And I think I actually said this on Dan's stream as well, that, I can imagine a position that we get in whereby Europe has to be liberated by a coalition of First Nations and Asian socialist states that disarm it, essentially, right? Like, I could see that being a thing that has to happen. That capitalism becomes isolated to just Europe, essentially. That it becomes the last, like, stronghold of hanging on to the spoils of colonialism for as long as possible. Well, because of the resulting revolutions all over the world, they have less and less super profits in order to appease their own population, right? So having to get more and more. Well, we know the result of that, of the result of a drying up of super profits to appease your own people ends up a lot of times resulting in we could say, I don't want to say like emerging of fascism, because fascism never went anywhere, but in turning that fascism towards people who were formerly protected from fascism, people who were formerly included in the master race scheme. But yeah, I could definitely see something like that happening, where Europe has to be disarmed by liberated First Nations and so on. Solving all problems by raising the level of people's consciousness is the method inherent to the communists. The communists who struggle for the freedom and happiness of the people lead the revolution to victory and fulfill their noble mission by awakening people ideologically and making them conscious and encouraging them to undertake the struggle of their own accord. The communists have a powerful ideological weapon capable of awakening all the people to activity. I figured us flying into Europe to Joan Fogarty. Coming soon to a world near you. Yep. Oh, God. The communists who struggle for freedom and happiness of the people lead the revolution Oh, I already read this. The communists have a powerful ideological weapon capable of awakening all the people to activity. Although the capitalist class too strives to spread its ideology, capitalist thinking cannot be accepted by the masses as their own because it fundamentally conflicts with their interests. Only the working class ideology, which champions the interests of the working masses, can be accepted by all the people, and it alone can dominate the whole society. Doing everything by awakening people politically and ideologically is a solid guarantee for the triumph of revolution and construction. Reliance on the high degree of the masses' revolutionary consciousness will give a strong impetus to the revolutionary struggle and construction work, overcome unfavorable conditions, and speed up the victory of revolution. And there you have the socio-historical principles of the Juche philosophy. And so, with all that in mind, from now on, whenever you analyze, from now on, whenever you analyze social history, aka the history of humanity, I want you to do it with these 4 principles in mind. Okay? Whenever you analyze the history of society, the history of people, yes, keep in mind what you've learned from historical materialism and the lessons from historical materialism. But at that same time, I want you to keep in mind these particular principles and use these to overcome the limitations that you run up to with historical materialism. So, 1, that the masses of the people are the subject of social history. That human history is the history of the people's struggle for independence. That the socio-historical movement is a creative movement of the masses. That's all socio-historical movement is a creative movement of the masses. And that the people's consciousness of independence plays the decisive role in revolutionary struggle. They're the 4 principles I want you to keep in mind whenever you analyze social history. And the next time we read from this work, we will be coming here and we will be looking at the guiding principles of the Juche idea, which essentially spells out the principles, the generalized principles for how revolution should be carried out in any country. And of course, we apply these principles creatively, and so on and so forth, but these are the necessary things. Juche ideology, independence in politics, self-sufficiency in the economy, self-reliance in defense. Those aren't things unique to Korea. These are things that all socialist societies need to realize and understand to build. And then we have the creative stand. After that, the creative method. So the independent stand will be first, then the creative method, and then the main stress on ideological remolding. And then finally, the historical significance of the Juche idea. And then we will be on to the next work in this compilation on some problems of the ideological foundation of socialism, on having a correct viewpoint and understanding of Juche philosophy, and finally, the Juche philosophy is an original revolutionary philosophy. Hope you enjoyed that reading. I'm going to fill up my drink here. And I just want you to think about what we just read for a minute. If you want the link to what we just read, you can find it right here. Let me fill up my drink. If you are enjoying my work, think about subbing. Think about biddies and gift subs. Always welcome. A good way to show that you support my work. All right, everybody.
The revolution that feeds the children gets my support.
Exactly, Sam.
To say that socialism doesn't work is to overlook the fact that it did work, and it worked for hundreds of millions of people.
You know what a shit barometer is, Bob?
Oh?
Measures the shit pressure in the air. You can feel it. Listen, Bubs, hear that? The sounds of the whispering winds of shit.
I would have been friends with Stalin.
True.
He's a communist. Oh, really? Yep, big communist. Big communist. Oh.
It's all for one motherfucker and one motherfucker for all motherfuckers everywhere, you know what I'm saying?
Of CMs? Playing developing Korea.
Long live the People's Revolution!
Do you think the ill dynasty? I mean, I think referring to Korea, to DPRK as the ill dynasty is not the best thing, because it plays into the idea of like the trope of hermit kingdom, right? Which is not it's a socialist society. It's not a monarchy or something like this. Not a fan of the dynasty term. And I mean, and I would say like the you mean like the Kim Jong Il era. I'm not a fan of the Duck Dynasty, that's for sure. Sorry, what is CMs? I don't know what CM stands for. That's the only thing I'm confused about. And China, I don't think there's really much a role that China can play other than being an ally to Korea and helping to normalize, I guess, trade relations and stuff by, you know, whatever ideological influence they are able to influence other people with. But I think in many ways, like, Korea is able to do this on their own. I think they realized, like, South Korea is never going to give up its position voluntarily. Like, I think they know this. I think they